Hello and welcome. And today we're joined by Damiana, and we're joined, hopefully you can see him, by Cheris. This is effectively the third part, which began with Did I grab your at tense I on? In that first episode, we discussed about seeing number sequences, and I gave you a sort of blueprint of how to examine the whole process of what draws your attention to it. In the second part, I turn to what seems to be a viral topic at the moment about these hidden chambers, alleged hidden chambers under the Great Pyramid of Giza. What I will add to that, is there any evidence of water saturation and markings on those internal chambers in the Great Pyramid? Because it must be remembered that those pyramids were partially underwater for several hundred years, and they did have casing stones. So this whole SARS scan, why are they not picking up casing stones? Because certainly from photographs I've seen as recently as the 1940s, the Nile Delta will have its high water level at a certain season, and it will come to very close proximity to the Giza complex. So therefore, if there are hidden chambers, then they would need to be sealed from this outside water. But the question that comes up from both those topics, the internal one of seeing number sequences and this latest topic about hidden chambers in this Khafre pyramid, and looks to be the Khufu pyramid, and no doubt it will lead on to the third pyramid, that I think it's the Menkura one. The question surely is, why now, to both of those topics? I want to go back over the letting go. Now, if we take this saying of as above, so below, can we find an equivalent to the letting go process and the as above, so below in this physical reality? And the answer is yes. If you were to climb a very high mountain, something like Everest, the air will get very thin, and if not done in the right way, can have fatal consequences. Likewise, its opposite extremity, going deep into the oceans, can potentially result or have the same result of fatality. So you've got two extremities, but both can potentially give the same result if done in a not done in a careful way, shall we say. I would suggest what also comes into this, with this whole letting go, is no one sees the Father except through the Son. Whilst there is a concept of this supreme being all-loving, if we take in the context of as above, so below, so if we don't recognize those number sequences, if something does not get our attention to see those numbers, would it not also apply to the higher realms, as it were, in that this supreme being would not recognize us if we don't have this connection? certainly with the number sequences, there seems to be this phenomena, this connection that alerts our attention. So we actually not just observe the numbers, but we actually notice those numbers. So if no one sees the Father except through the Son, if that connectivity is firewalled off in any way or is severed, then would this ever-loving Supreme Being even recognize us? In the same way, would we recognize those number sequences? And also, would we recognize the why now with whatever the latest hot topic is that we can basically call a conspiracy theory? Now, if we look at this from the material sense with something such as a cell phone or a computer, they can do certain functions, like the calculator or the torch in the case of the cell phone. And you can make sort of little recordings as a sort of vocal memoir, as it were. But without the connectivity, without that Wi-Fi connection, really what good are those devices? So there has to be a connectivity in the material sense for these devices to work. So if we then look at the as above aspect to this, then surely there needs to be maintaining a connectivity to the higher realms, to the higher self, or to the Supreme Being. So would the Supreme Being even sense us? And notice the word sense us, and in this material reality you have such a thing as a census. Is there any coincidence in that? We can also consider a two-way traffic, as it were, through this connectivity when we talk in terms of serving God, shall we call it, and what serves us. So if that connection is lost, would it be fair to say that this Supreme Being would let go of things it no longer recognizes? Certainly this is alluded to in the sci-fi series Doctor Who, with that blue police box that is bigger on the inside than on the outside, and in that story it jettisons rooms that are no longer used. It goes through its own letting go process, which is shown in sci-fi. So just referring to my notes. So you can see that there are, using the analogy of climbing a mountain and going into deep waters, you have limits which would be which potentially could have catastrophic results not to stay within those limits. When we turn this into the esoteric sense, the whole subject of grounding and earthing, it implies taking that middle path. So what I'm saying, that there is a pattern. So if you do what is called a deep dive into anything, it is no different from doing a deep dive in an ocean. The pressure will build and build, and then you have to go through a decompression. So what would be the decompression in this reality, in this physical experience? I would suggest that when you go too far diving deep into anything in the esoteric and into the sort of conspiracy side, shall we say, that there is a requirement to have a decompression. And I feel that is most commonly expressed in when we have what you could say are curveballs thrown at us in our sort of daily lives. It could be encounters with certain individuals that are not on the same wavelength, that are referred to as energy vampires. So as much as anything else, it also reflects this pattern of the letting go, and what should we recognize and what should we discard. I would suggest here that very much the theme was played out in events in 2020, shall we say, and I refer you to what Rudolf Steiner said in 1917 about this severing of this God connection. So if we immerse ourselves deeply into something, there does need to be this decompression, because certainly a lot of these things, when we dive deep and we effectively go into these underground chambers, as it were, it can lead to finding things that are not pleasant and leave you with a sort of bitter aftertaste, and can potentially lead to sort of a paranoia of everything is out to get us. So it does require this decompression. So these things that we may perceive in the moment as being very negative, I would suggest are the very things that are acting as a decompression to bring us back to center, bring us back to that center point or that middle path, so we're neither too high nor too low. There seems to me that there is a reason, a reason for everything, and that we are on this surface level, and we can look above and we can look below, but it requires us to remain on this middle path between the two, see the as above and see the so below as well, but to not get stuck too deeply in either, and be able to bring yourself back to grounding, to earthing, to bring yourself back to center, as it were. Just let's have a look. Have I got any other notes here? So yeah, the question, not just with this new topic of, well, it's not even a new topic really. It's been suggested many times before about hidden chambers. That I've certainly seen tourist filming of electrical cables that seem to disappear below ground. I find it inconceivable that this information would not be released, if it's even true, without there being a reason for it to do with the timing. And also comes back to number sequences and the timing when we recognize those. But can we equally recognize these external topics that are presented to us, and what it is trying to emit from us, where it is trying to lead us? Because how much do we know is even true about this external story? So that's all I really have got to say on it, but it seems to sort of tie in with finding that middle path rather than going too high or too low into anything, and staying centered and staying grounded. So that's the conclusion of this third part of this little mini-series, brought to you by myself, and though she's not said a lot, Damiana's been on my lap the entire time. Charis has gone off exploring again. So, as always, unconditional love to you all, and do check out the notes in the description if you wish to get in contact with me for any reason. If you like this train of thought and there are things you are puzzled by, well, hopefully we can at least demystify it, take the fear element out of it, and see things for what they really are, which are all effectively just experiences from which we either grow from or we drop an anchor and we restrict ourselves in our spiritual growth. So, as always, unconditional love to you all.